Hello and welcome to the Petticoated Swashbuckler. My name is Maren and this is my new veranda. So, first a little update on my life. For those of you who've been watching all the videos, including the very first one that I made, in that one I said that I'm a historian and that I live in Norway and work for a museum. And while I'm still a historian, because that doesn't change, you don't just like suddenly lose your education, I am no longer working for a museum, and I'm also moving to a different part of Norway. I decided that it was time to get some more education, because you can never have too much education, to finish an education that I never really got to start because work got in the way. And now felt like a good time to pick that up again. So I'm becoming a student, and of course that's gonna affect my personal life, my economy. But I think I will be sufficiently good at budgeting so that this change in situation won't affect the project that we're working on to any great extent. To do this studying, I'm also having to move. So I'm moving to a new apartment, and the reason why I'm filming out on the veranda is because the rest of the apartment is chaos at the moment. This is the only vaguely serene-ish part of the house at the moment. So if the sound's wonky, that's why, I'm sorry. I'm moving in with my boyfriend slash tailor's assistant slash cameraman and our two kitties. So it'll be a very lively home once we're all settled in properly. So that's that. Just thought I'd tell you that. I'm not sure if I will put this video up first or the other, but I will be making a sort of making a new sewing space video for you. Both a sort of tour of my old sewing room, a bit about what I want to do differently in my new sewing space, and then the move and the packing and a tour of my new sewing room. But for now, that's enough about my moving and my personal life. It's time to get on with our good Mrs. Bamford. Now, Mrs. Anne Bamford, who died sometime around 1780, she was a lady of fashion. Her inventory, consisting of more than 200 items of clothing, includes a lot of nightgowns, not sleepwear, but gowns that you would wear for an evening, you know, when you feel like being fancy, going to a party, that sort of thing. She has only one gown that's just called gown, and then she has 7 nightgowns, as well as one brocaded silken nightgown that has not been made up yet into a gown, and a muslin, a printed muslin gown that has not been made up yet either. And of these 7 gowns that are actually proper gowns that she would have worn, 5 of them are muslin, 4 of them are printed muslin. So I thought, if I'm going to make a gown for the good Mrs. Bamford, I should probably start with the one that she was the most fan of, and that is definitely, I think someone's tearing something down somewhere, never mind. That is definitely the printed muslin gown. So I've decided to make a printed gown. I was a bit surprised because I thought printed gowns, I kind of think of them as belonging to the latter part of the 18th century, sort of from 1770 onwards. So for a woman who died in 1780, I thought that was a little bit odd, but maybe not. Or maybe she just could afford to get like a completely new wardrobe every 10 years. What do I know? Not enough. If you know something about Anne Bamford, tell me. I am dying to know. So anyway, I have got this beautiful printed muslin. The print is probably a little too small for, say, 1775, 1780. Or the print size is fine. There should be more space between the patterns. But it's got a beautiful sort of leafy pattern, and I've bought it from a reenactment store, a Danish one. I'll link it down below. Who I think have bought it from Ozark Calicos by Fabric Quilt Incorporated. That I don't know anything about, but it looks beautiful. It looks like, you know, the kind of Dutch white and blue porcelain. And who doesn't want to be a teacup? So I'm gonna make myself a Dutch porcelain dress. Wanna come along? I like to start from the inside out when I'm making something, so I'm starting by constructing a petticoat that I can wear underneath my Italian gown. As you can see, the false rump we made back in February really adds a lot of bulk to my backside, so the length of the petticoat at its longest needs to be as long as it is from my waist over my bum to the floor. Mrs. Bamford's inventory includes a number of white petticoats, so I'm making another from white cotton satin. Unlike the petticoats I made for my side hoops, I won't be doing any adjustments to this one before I make it up. I will just make 2 similar panels and then adjust the length on my dress form so that the hem hangs evenly. Using the mantua maker stitch that we used for the other petticoats, as well as a simple hem stitch for the side slits, my petticoat now looks like this. I also went ahead and hemmed my petticoat using a ribbon, and the same technique as in my petticoat video, which I will link down below. Inspired by the American Duchess Guide to 18th Century Dressmaking book, I thought I'd pleat my skirt before I put it on my dress form to adjust the hem. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm just marking out about 1/4 of my waist measurement, plus maybe 1/2 inch or 1 inch, marking that with a pin, and moving the edge of my skirt to that pin. And all the fabric that is between these 2 pins now is what needs to be pleated down. Now this panel is the back panel, and I want a big inverted box pleat right at the back, at the middle back. So that's what I'm starting with. I'm just measuring out how wide I want that box pleat, that inverted box pleat, and pleating that down and fastening, just securing with a pin. Now what I like to do is just measure out how wide, what kind of distance I want between my knife pleats. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm just laying down my tape measure and pinning into my ironing board at regular intervals. First the middle, then the middle of that piece, then I divide the next piece in 2, and then smaller pieces again, really just depending on how narrow I want my knife pleats. And then I really just do the same with the fabric. I just fold it and mark that middle fold with a pin.
and then I fold that portion, mark that with a pin, I fold that portion, mark that with a pin, and then I really just keep folding and marking until I'm happy and I have the same distance between all pins. And then it's simply the case of matching pins. So that's what I'm doing. I'm pulling the fabric up to match the pins on the ironing board and just pinning that down, and you can already start to see the shape of the pleats to come. Then we can start to lay the pleats down in the direction we want them, which is towards the back. And that's really it. I'm just folding them over the way I want them and pinning them in place. I will go in and baste them down when I'm done with both sides of this panel, just so that they stay in place when I start fiddling with them on the dress form. And here we have a quarter of the skirt is pleated into fairly regular pleats. I then went on and put my pleated petticoat onto my dress form and started to fiddle with it to find out how I needed to, where I needed to pull it up to create an even hem. And of course there's a lot of bulk in the back side, so that did need a lot of pulling up, but there's less bulk in the mid-back, so I actually ended up having to pull that up quite a bit so that the petticoat would hang nice. This bit turned out to be quite fun. It was just a lot of fiddling around, trying things, pinning it, taking it down again. It took a bit of time, but it was a nice experience. Now the front, as you can see, needed quite a lot of pulling up if I were to avoid having like a mid-front train, which I really did not want. So I ended up having to pull the skirt quite far up onto the tummy of the dummy. And I actually ended up having to kneel in front of my dummy just to be able to keep my eye on the hem and the waist at the same time. Then it was just a case of matching up the sides, still making sure the hem was even. To mark where the waist, the waistline, the waistband of my petticoat should be, I just tied a string, a piece of thread around the waist of the dress form and then pulled it down to where I wanted the waistline to go. And this just gave me a marking that made it easier when I pinned the waistband onto the form, onto the petticoat. I made sure to catch every layer and every pleat with my pins. And you can see I basted quite far down, but I could have basted even further. The waistband is then sewn on, turned over and sewn down on the back side of the on the inside of the petticoat, and the result is pretty neat. I like it. And I also went ahead and attached one cotton tape to each side opening.
Okay, so I've got this book that we've used before, The American Duchess Guide to 18th Century Dressmaking, and because the sort of printed muslin dress is very reminiscent of the later part of our period, I thought I should make a sort of 1870s, what's called an Italian gown in this book. So that means with the separate bodice and skirt, there's no piece that's cut from the neck all the way to the hem of the skirt, as it is in earlier styles. And this book has a really good sort of how to make an Italian gown but the pattern is one size and you need to scale it up, and scaling it up should be fine. I'm still a bit worried about sizing it up to fit me, because I think the model that they used in the book for this gown is fairly slim, a lot slimmer than I am. So I could try to grade it up to fit me. I could also try and drape it on myself or on the dress form. I'm not very good with draping or with scaling up or grading up. However, I'm a math person. I love numbers, I love calculations and geometry. I've always done. And this book here, which is called Creating Historical Clothes, Pattern Cutting from Tudor to Victorian Times, is a really marvellous book, and it goes through sort of step by step making your own pattern based on your own measurements, and how you can adapt that pattern to fit different styles, different eras. And they have a pattern for a sort of 18th century closed front separate skirt type of bodice. So I think I'm going to try and make my own pattern. Let's see how that goes.
So the book gives very detailed instructions on how to construct your own bodice block or pattern block using a combination of your own measurements and some standardized measurements, which I did on my centimeter scale gridded pattern paper.
This is how my pattern looks so far. I've done a lot of sort of calculations down here. So this is the centre back, the armhole and the front back, and this is the shoulder dart. I've even come so far as to, because so far this is a modern block, pattern block, but you would want to take out some darts in the waist to avoid wearing a sack. However, I am now going to stop following the sort of modern way of making clothing and divert into the 18th century, and I've already remarked some of my points on the pattern here. So let's see how we can make this, fashion, but make it 18th century.
So this process involved a lot of cutting up, marking new seams, taping together again, taping new pieces onto old pieces, drawing on those pieces, and cutting them apart again. And it was quite fun. It was like a combination of math and arts and crafts.
I am done with my pattern construction, I guess you could call it. So this is the back piece, and then there's that's from, wait, sorry. It's the side piece. Front piece. Shoulder strap. And I've also drafted a sleeve piece.
I'm kind of tempted to tidy them up a bit, but I probably won't spend any more time drawing new patterns with seam allowances, because I don't yet know if these patterns actually will work or if I need to start from scratch. I'm guessing this is the time to make a mock-up. And unlike a lot of other people, I really do not like making mock-ups. I like it when I make them and they show me their usefulness. And I'm very aware that you should make mock-ups. However, I'm trying to use period plausible, historically plausible period techniques for this project, and I'm very uncertain as to whether an 18th century mantua maker would actually have used a lot of mock-ups, because fabric was really expensive. Even undyed, unbleached, linen would probably cost quite a bit. So I'm thinking, but I really do need to make a mock-up. So how do I make this historically accurate? Well, I don't know. I don't know enough about this. And if you know a lot about how 18th century mantua makers approached the issue of mock-ups, tell me, because I'm dying to know. I think what would make sense to me in my head is to make a mock-up out of your lining material, and then if it fits, you just use the mock-up as your lining. But if it doesn't, you make a new lining. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm thinking I will probably need at least one mock-up, because this pattern, although mathematically correct, probably doesn't fit me perfectly, because no person is mathematically correct. So I will, and I only have a little linen. I thought I'd line my dress in white linen, because that seems to be fairly common for these cotton dresses. And although linen would have been probably the most affordable alternative to an 18th century mantua maker, for me the most affordable alternative is unbleached cotton. So I think I'll use that for my mock-up. If it works, like good enough that I can actually use it for my lining, then I will line my dress in unbleached cotton. But if it doesn't, I will make a new one, and I'll probably make that one out of linen. We'll see.
So I made the mock-up, I basted it together and put it on my dress form. My dress form is made, I've made it myself from my own measurements, so it should be, it should kind of be the same, but of course I'm squishy and unsquishy in places where my dress form isn't. So even with the stays on, it won't be exactly the same, but I still find it really helpful, because I usually work alone. I sometimes get help from my boyfriend. I sometimes ask him to help me, but most of the time I work alone, and I don't know, I just find it really helpful to sort of start out on my dress form, to see the sort of first initial fitting, to see if something works, or if something is completely crazy, or if something is, works really well. And let's be honest, usually it's a combination. Some things work, some things don't.
So I am very glad I made a mock-up, because even though the pattern fits okay, there are still some modifications that I'd like to do to it. The back fits fairly good, but I'm going to have to take away some on the top here, because otherwise it gaps really badly. And if you look at this side, the arm side is like way too high. I know 18th century dresses are supposed to have very high arm sides, but I'm going to be realistic here. This is not going to fit me. I will not be able to fit my arms through this, so that needs taking away. And then it rides up a little bit under the arm, whereas, let's see if I can turn her. whereas this bit here is a bit too low. And then inexplicably, it's too narrow across the chest, even though I used a measurement that is bigger than my own, which is strange. And also there's something very wrong with these, as in very wrong. So I've done some alterations to the other side. I've moved and changed the straps here a little bit. I'm still not very happy with them, but I'm gonna have to try this on myself as well and see if I like it better. I've widened the arm thigh. My stays are already fairly sort of hugging my underarm area, so I know that I can cut them to follow my arms, my stays, and it'll be about right. I have lengthened the shoulder straps, as well as I showed you, taking it in the back, and I've also cut away some of this here so that it doesn't sag. And I think no, maybe not, but you know, that might help with the riding up on the sides as well. As for the bust, I'm just gonna have to. I'm going to have to do something. Actually, you know what? Looking at it, I'm thinking that these fall so far back, and this one is not closing. Might actually be that I need to add some room here in this seam on this side. Let's try that, see what happens. So having moved the side seam a little bit, taking that out, the front actually closes now, and I think the shoulder strap looks a lot better as well. So I think that was it. That was the hitch. This is definitely not going to be my lining. It's too much that needs doing with it. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to make a new mock-up, and we're going to try it on me and not on, you know. So, welcome to my very messy new flat. I have made my second mock-up. And I have a very sticky outer pin, never mind. And I'm really glad I did. I seem to have solved most of my fitting issues, apart from the fact that this is still, you see, it's still too long. So I'm still going to have to, but I've added some seam allowance, so I might just remove that and see if that helps. Also, weirdly, the front is too big now, so you see this bit, this less translucent bit here. That's basically like 3 layers of fabric that I've just sort of squished to the side to have this sort of closure sort of in the middle. Also, there's something very strange happening here. I think these went down there, but I don't think I need them to. Maybe, I don't know. It's very weird. I'm not at all, well, I'm not super happy with the way that my armholes, my arm size, the way they look, and the shoulder straps look really weird. So I think I might try and change that. And I will also, the sleeves were like weirdly way too short and also way too wide. So I ended up looking like I had very roomy t-shirt sleeves on me, which is not the look I'm going for. However, this kind of is. I like the shape of this. I really do. For a person who doesn't really like mock-ups, there's gotta be a lot of mock-ups. I'm using this book to construct my pattern, and I mean, it does have really nice sort of how you change a basic sort of body block pattern into an 18th century pattern. However, the actual instructions on how to make your body block I wasn't too fond of, because I think they're too much. They're depending too much on sort of standard measurements. You know that that everyone's supposed to. If your chest is this width, then your overarm width is supposed to be this, and people aren't made like that. At least I know I'm not. But I do have this book that I've used before, and I'm sorry it's in Norwegian, but it's a really great book. I don't know if it's translated, but this girl here, she knows her stuff. And this book has got instructions on how to make a pattern for modern dresses, modern garments. So I thought, what if I took this body block pattern and then made the same alterations to it? Can I do that to any block pattern, or does it have to be from this book? And here is the result. And I'm fairly happy with it, actually. I mean, I have to take it in, I have to take it in a little bit at the sides. But that's not so strange, because this is made, this was meant to make modern garments, and they usually have a little bit more ease than you find in 18th century dresses. And I need to do something here, because it's a bit too, this needs to be raised up a bit. But apart from that, I really like it. The sleeves that I made using my historical sewing book were very weird and did not fit in any way, shape or form. They were too short and too wide. So I tried the same alterations to a basic sleeve pattern using the basic sleeve pattern from my modern sewing book, and here's the result. And I think I'm a lot more happy with this, actually. I mean, it will look nicer once it's lined, because it's too, it rides up. It's not good. And it might actually be a little too wide. I might take it in just a smidge. But I'm much more happy with that than with the other one. So I think my experiment has proved that you can take any sort of bodice block and you can make it, change it into a historical shape, which is great news.
With this video already being more than long enough, I think we're going to leave the actual construction of the actual gown for the next video. But for now, from me, from my lovely dress form and my slightly less lovely mock-up, I wish you a pleasant autumn, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!